Oh, right. I can't end that. I don't want to record all of this. Share screen. We've got to do it all in the right way, otherwise it doesn't work. Now, can you all see that? Just making sure you can see that. Excellent. Okie doke. Perfect. And it's all yours, Sylvie.
Okay.
You just let me know when you want me to click on.
Yes, yeah. So, welcome to everybody. And this is a talk about my time as an artist in residence in New Zealand, in Auckland, at Auckland Studio Potters. And if you put the next slide.
There we go.
Okay. So just a little bit of background. So I'm, as you can hear, I'm French, born and bred, but I've lived here for about 30 odd years. And I had never done pottery until I took my kids to a family learning class when they were really little. And obviously being small kids, they liked it, but I really loved it. So so basically when they lost interest, I continued. I did adult classes with the same teacher, and then I went on to do BTEC 1, 2, 3, etc. And we have a garage, so I started squatting only a corner of the garage, and then I decided pottery was a lot more important than parking the car. So the car is out, and and basically the whole garage is now a pottery studio. So yeah, so these are some of the first things I managed to sell. It was at small local fairs, usually organized by one of the teachers. One of them is Julia Zordan, who still teaches actually in Chiswick. She specialized in porcelain, but yeah, she had classes, adults for her. And once, sorry, if you can.
Sorry, yeah, Kathy's texting me. Okay.
Sorry. So that's what the garage looks like now. In about 2016, that's what it looked. So we've got 3 big benches and 3 wheels, and I do a couple of small group classes only for adults per week. And I also have a lot of local potters who are all quite autonomous and experienced, but they've got nowhere to pot, so they come to my place for studio time, basically. And I do all the firings and so yeah, this is the sort of thing that that I was really interested in, is actually using the actual color of the clay, of various clays. In this case, you've got the black clay with porcelain, and the other pot is just a regular buff, so a very sort of cheap, easy clay to find with a tiny bit of porcelain and a tiny bit of black. And I'm always interested basically in using the color of the clay, the natural color of the clay, without doing any painting or decorating or colored glazes on top to show the pot. And this is kurinuki. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. It's an ancient technique, hand building technique from Japan. And you have a block of clay, which you do not distort and you do not change, except you will, kurinuki means hollowing out. So you will hollow out the inside and carve or texture or both the outside. So it's something that any beginner can do, as well as, anybody can have a go at that without any special tools, really. You don't need to be good at the wheel or anything to do it. And it sounds very easy, but it's one of these things that's sound easy, but it's not as easy as it looks. But you really have to think about the negative space and the balance between the inside, the outside, and will it still be standing if you dig a bit more? So, but it's the sort of thing I really like. It you always end up with a very unique piece. It's impossible to redo twice, really. And the next bit, so that's a different form. I started by doing very sort of mountain-like tall vases. That's a very different form. And actually, that's one of the pots to demonstrate that I took with me to New Zealand. And that's when I don't do kurinuki and I don't do like jars on the wheel, I tend to do platters. Some of them actually, I'm sure most of you, some of them I've shown at the exhibitions at SOFAP. They tend to have bamboo leaves or, some sort of other leaves from the garden impressed in them. And it's in black clay usually. So this residency, it came about because my husband is from New Zealand, and quite a few of our friends and all his family are still in New Zealand, in Auckland or around Auckland. And my sister-in-law, who goes to this studio just to pot once a week, said, "Oh, they do residencies, you should apply, blah blah." That was actually in 2020, and I did early on. So I was about to apply, and then, we all had the terrible. Sorry, the dog is going mad. And yeah, so that had to be postponed. And eventually, when they said, yes, we'd be delighted to have you, that was I was accepted, I think, in June 22 for 2 months, February and March in 23, so a year ago. And that's the pod they have. So that's the area with all the wood firing kiln. And the one before, they have 2 pods for artists in residence. So there's one, and I don't know if you can really see, but there's one as well on the left-hand side there. That's for another artist as well. And at the beginning, there wasn't anybody. I was the only one. Yes, and I was, because New Zealand reopened after COVID, a bit like Japan, very late. I think they were the last ones to reopen to foreign travel and foreign anything. I was the first one, the first artist in residence who came from, international one. All they had before was all people from New Zealand who came before that. So yeah. That's the area. It's basically in Auckland, but south of Auckland, not far from the sea, and it's quite an industrial place. There's loads of like garages and things for car parts and things like that. But at the back of this is a very big park, so that's why they're able to do wood firing and salt firing, where you get big flames, and there's no way you can do this, for example, in the middle of Chiswick. I mean, you would have all the neighbors would call the fire brigade, and sadly. So yes, it's one of the draw to go there, was really to be able to fire pots in wood and salt firing, and also they have a big gas kiln, which means that you fire in reduction. So I don't know any of you know the difference between oxidation and reduction. Basically, firing in oxidation is you fire in electric kiln, and it's probably the most common, certainly in cities. And reduction, it's called reduction because you reduce the amount of oxygen when you arrive at 800 degrees or 900 degrees. You reduce the amount of oxygen, and that in turn basically pulls iron and all sorts of things from the clay body to the surface of the pot, and it also changes oxides. So, for example, if you've done something with copper, which in oxidation looks green, in reduction it looks red. I mean, so red it's actually called ox blood here. Sang buff in French, but yeah. And so it's a big change. And generally speaking, if you like glazes on pots rather than, I would say, a painterly approach to the decoration, you usually like reduction because it tends to have a much richer surface. It's sort of deeper effect on the surface of the pot. And basically when you apply for the residency, they have two types of residencies. One of them, you basically pay something which is actually very reasonable per week or per month for the use of the studio. And you do your own thing and they fire for you. In the other one, you don't have to pay anything, but you will have to do a presentation about your work. You will have to do a workshop. And I basically decided to propose a Korinuki workshop because it's not so common. And they had loads of people there doing throwing and all that. So, and I'm not the best thrower in the world. So Korinuki sounded like a really good one to do. And the other thing that I said in the note of intent was to try and use local clays. So there, the local clays, the New Zealand commercial clay bodies that they use there, which are, I mean, very different from what you use here, and also to try and get some wild clay. So literally clay that you go and dig out from somewhere. And when I looked at a geological map of New Zealand, amazingly, one of the really good deposits of clay was in the same spot where my father-in-law has got his farm. So, and we thought, oh, okay, so maybe, I mean, it's quite a lot of land, but, where would you, it doesn't actually, the map doesn't pinpoint exactly where the clay deposit will be. So we thought, that might take a while to find. So but what we did is that, so I told my father-in-law, who knows nothing about pottery, and I said, look, there should be some clay around. And immediately he said, oh yes, I know where, because we dug a hole. He's got sheep, like New Zealand, so he's got sheep on the farm, and they dug a very deep hole with a machine to bury dead sheep. But because of it, they had to take all this clay out, all this soil out. Loads of it was in a pile, and all we had to do was just fill the buckets with a shovel, which was unhoped for, really. I thought I was going to have to spend days digging there and then to try and find somewhere, but it was all almost done for me. So yeah, we went with my father-in-law and my sister-in-law to just dig and fill some buckets. And the clay is really, I mean, there's no filter in the picture. It's really almost bright orange, which you don't see around here, really. It's either terracotta or it's something that's much whiter. So I had, and it's not because you find it that is guaranteed to be good or that you're guaranteed to be able to work with it. But that was part of the residency, was to test it and to try to do something with it. So when you dig out clay, if it's big chunks and all that, you basically put it in a bucket and slake it. So you just pour water on top and just let it thin and become less, much thinner bits in it, but you can then put on a plaster vat and reclaim and wedge like you would for normal clay. So these, the pots that are on the shelf there, that was in my pod, and it's some of the first things I did with the clay, the commercial clay that they have in New Zealand. And again, at that point, I was, there was no, I hadn't tested anything in the kiln, so I didn't really know what it was going to be like. So it was more a matter of producing some pots and then using the test afterwards. So once they started going into the kiln, so these are two of the beakers, the beer cups, with a chino glaze. And chino is specifically for reduction. So if you put it in an electric kiln, it just looks flat, white, and quite very boring. But in because you can see all the orange bits, that's the iron in the clay that's coming out. So where it's thick, it's sort of a pearly white, and where it's thin, it's shades of orange. And on the right, it's little tests with some of the various commercial clays that came out of the kiln. And at the back, well, it didn't survive that one, but at the back, on the banding wheel, is the first pot I tried to hand build with the white clay. So in this one, it's not mixed clay. It's just the white clay on its own, and it was very plastic. So that was I suppose the other discovery is that it was so easy to work with. I mean, almost as good as something has been mixed, especially for potters. Yes, and that's just to have something else, because obviously it was February and March, so it was. Oh, hello. I think that's somebody. Yeah, it was February and March, which is their end of summer, and it'd been very wet, and all the Kiwis were saying, "Oh, it's a terrible summer." But obviously, when you come from England and you're used to February in England, it was absolutely divine. You wear new t-shirts and shorts all the time, and you had this sort of landscapes, as soon as you went out. So that was one of the added benefit of going to New Zealand that time of year. So I did a lot of the pots in chino because I liked the result so much. And the one on the right is exactly the same glaze and the same firing as the one on the left, but it's much thicker. And all this big and small speckle that you can see, it's the iron that's in the clay body originally that's coming through. And I mean, it's not everybody will like it. It's really something that I really like. And actually, this one, when we did the exhibition, I didn't want it to be sold, and I did take it back to Britain. And the other thing that I did a lot there, because it takes more time and it's a much slower technique than, say, producing something on the wheel, it's the kurinuki. So you have a whole, and all the blades and all the knives that you can see on the top picture, it's basically things that I had to buy again as soon as I arrived in New Zealand, because obviously I couldn't actually travel, especially I had to stop over in the States, and I couldn't have that sort of thing in my luggage because I think it would have looked very suspicious with all the blades. Some of them are really big. So yeah. So basically, first thing I did was to go to what they call op shops, charity shops, and get all sorts of different knives with different edges to create different surfaces and different cuts as well. So yes, there was a whole little shelf of kurinuki things The one in the middle is a box. It's got a lid. So there's one of them that didn't survive. Or maybe all these did. No, yeah, no, all these did actually. And at this stage, as you see them there, obviously none of them, they're just still drying to be able to go into the first firing. So none of them have been fired yet. Sorry. And yes, and so sometimes in like mid-March, we had a date on a Saturday where I was going to do a Kuronuki workshop for the members. So ASP functions, they've got a very large communal workshop studio with, I don't know, maybe like 12 wheels and some kick wheels, big benches, and they have loads of members who come for classes or are quite advanced and just come a bit like studio time. They come, once or twice a week, and they pay by the session. And every so often somebody will do, like I did, a special workshop on a special technique. So I did the Kuronuki, and none of them had done it before. So, but I think it was quite fun for everybody. They all chose different clays. And yeah, and if you look at the, I think, next page, yeah. So some people have done, if you see the two smaller pictures on the right, they've done much flatter edges. And there's the sort of things that I do, which is very cut and has got loads of angles. Obviously, there's absolutely zero obligation to do something like that. You can do something that's much softer. And that's the person, she's called Annie Crichton. She's actually a painter and an illustrator. She works for New Zealand Herald and does cartoons as well. But what she likes is using the flat surfaces on each side to decorate. And that's the pots that she prepared on the right there. And yeah, somebody had black clay, actually the same, interestingly, the same black clay, which originally is from Germany that you find here, is sold in New Zealand. And I thought, my God, it must be terribly expensive to import from Germany or from Britain. But actually what they do is the German company sells the recipe of it to somebody in New Zealand who makes it and then conditions it and sell it. So it was actually slightly cheaper than what I pay for it when I have to buy it. But yeah, somebody had the black clay, and that's one of mine. This one actually, only part of it survived and was fired later. So a part of so as I was saying, one of the great things is that they do have these wood firing kilns. It's a lot of work and it's teamwork, but it's very rewarding, and you can put quite a few pots, maybe like almost 200 pots in it. So it's, even though it doesn't look very big, you put a lot in. It was the firing was led by Anne O'Sullivan, who's the lady in the red cap in the picture, and the picture on the left is the pots before they were fired. And so for this sort of firing, you have to you stoke the fire with long bits of wood on the front and the back of the kiln for, well, all the time. And originally it's always you start very slowly, and then you really have to fire like every 2 minutes, every 3 minutes. Sorry, to stoke the fire every 2-3 minutes. So it comes back very quickly. And it becomes very, very hot, obviously. And it's just very physical, because it goes on. You start at maybe 7 a.m. and you finish, it's like 8 p.m. So, yeah. Yeah. And that's when we reach almost 1200 degrees, which is normally where the kiln has a lot of wood in. It's got a lot of wood already and a lot of charcoal in it, so it's lacking space for new wood. So usually it stalls about that time, 1100, 1200. You have to find somehow reintroduce a bit of air and make the fire eat the wood more quickly, and it's and everybody's scratching their heads to know how to do this. And I've only gone to a handful of wood firing, but it seems no matter what the place, there's always that problem. So yes, and when you see the smoke and the flame, it's always a good sign. It's signs that the reduction is on the way. And so these are the results. So even though you basically within 24 hours, it's cool enough to open. And yeah, if you and these are some of my pots that were in it. So this one was wood, and then from 900 degrees, we also put salt. And what the salt, especially on the pot on the left, the little round pot, can you see it looks like pockmarked almost, no? It looks, and that is the salt being volatilized. Is that a word? Volatility. It becomes vaporized, maybe vaporized, no? Yeah. It becomes vaporized, and the salt it attacks the glaze on the pots, and that's what the pockmarks in the glaze is. So it will be depending where your pot was and where the salt comes from. It will be more, you will have one side that's got a lot of that, but not the other. And I mean, it's the part of the appeal, I think, for this is this, that you have a pot, you turn it, and I don't have one way, but you turn it, and it's it's never the same on the whole pot. It makes a very rich and varied surface, basically. And the one on the right is one of the Kurinuki one, which sold, actually. That one sold, so yeah. And that's another Kurinuki one. That's the one that broke at the bisque firing, and only the top survived. So we actually fired it horizontally. But it looked, I think it looks very good. And the other round pot, it basically had so much wood ash that it looked more like a traditional wood-fired pot than a salt-fired pot. But it's one of the ones I really like as well. So yeah, this one I kept as well. And so meanwhile, while all this was happening, because they have a kiln room, which is, I don't know, bigger than the size of my whole garage. They have, I think, 6 different kilns in the kiln room. That's apart from the wood firing kilns. And we tested the white clay. So that's what the white clay looks like, fired at 1200 degrees, so cone 6, in an electric kiln. We did try it in higher, but it just became very brittle and very dark brown and quite uninteresting. Whereas there, it just kept that sort of bright orange color. And all these ones, so there was a few different ones, all these ones, they basically went to my father-in-law and his wife, which it sounded right, given that I took their clay. So I think it was a good thing to give them back something for it. And this actually, I've got it here as well, but that's actually a better light on it. So this is a mixed clay, and you've got, can you see the very rusty bits? It looks very dark red. All these are bits of exactly the same clay you've seen on that orange pot, the white clay, mixed with a regular clay and fired in reduction higher, and with a chun on top of it. But it's, again, I mean, there's almost a break at the bottom, and there's almost a bit of a tear where there was a big bit of it, and I think it didn't like, it was a bit too much, the heat for it. But it's one of the looks, the sort of mixed clays that I really like. It was quite interesting to see how different it can be between 1200 in an electric kiln and 1280 in a, so it's only 80 degrees difference, but it's a huge difference in the way the clay will react and what it will do or not do. And this is Chinot, and so I did a lot of my pots in Chinot in the gas kiln, and the same way that I do here my bamboo platters, where I use real leaf and I impress it in the platter when it's fresh, and then I brush on oxides around it, and I use it as a resist, and then I lift it and put the glaze on. I did the same principle, but with using iron as the oxide, and the plant, which I don't actually know the name, but it was something that was growing just literally at the corner of my pod at ASP, and I impressed this in a little plate and brushed iron and put the Chinot on top, and that was fired in reduction. So it's a bit thicker on the leaf, but it's very red otherwise. And this one is the same. So this one is a very good illustration of what Chinot does. It's if it's thick, it will become almost white with the speckle, and if it's thin, you've got a sort of range of sort of peach orange colors that will let a lot more of the speckle through. And I think I mean personally I think that's really nice, but yeah, it's and the other clay that I did a lot in is one of they call it Raku Red, which we don't have here, which is a very, very dark clay with very thick speckle. But you can, I mean, it's got a lot of grog, but you can throw it. It's okay on the hands. And this is a chun. So it's normally on a white clay, it would come out the color that you see in the bluish color, quite bright. But on that clay, you've got on the very dark clay, it comes out this sort of dark green brown with loads of very thick speckle. So that was, and all that is fired in reduction again. Yes, that so normally, so one of the other things that ASP offers to potters who go on a residency is that you can, early on, if they've got room, you can book their exhibition space, which is quite a small exhibition space, but it's very well attended because it's a big potters community and local people know it well. And you can book it for free. And so I had like quite a few of my pots there at the end from the, I think, 20th of March until mid-April. So if you, Rowena, I think the picture that's in the middle, it's actually the start of a little video that goes around the exhibition. And I think at the bottom of it, if you click, it should play it. No?
No, unfortunately, the link has been corrupted and it doesn't work. So just
I
one
mean,
moment.
okay. But anyway, most of the pots that you've seen on different pictures, they were in the exhibition. Yes, there was a whole like Korinuki. So the interesting things are these Kurinuki pots, but are, I suppose, closer to sculptural work, really. They sold really well there. When I show them here, they never sell. So it's quite interesting, because New Zealand being maybe having more, they've got a lot more Japanese influence, I think, and South Korean. They have a lot more Japanese artists that are there, and I think somehow they seem to be more receptive to this. Whereas here, every time I've shown some, I think I must have sold once a really little one. And they're not, I mean, I don't put them more expensive than others or anything. It's just, I think it's one of these things where people wonder what the hell they are. They look at them like, I don't know, like a hen that's found a knife, as we say in French. But yeah, so that was really, for me, that was really nice to just have people really, actually going for the Kurinuki stuff. And yes, and afterwards the rest of the family joined. It sort of was about the same time as the Easter break for my kids, and we went touring for a couple of weeks. And meanwhile, they were selling the pots in the gallery for me, which is very nice. So yeah, so that's about it. I mean, there's always probably lots more. Yes, of course. No, I was forgetting. So what it's the second year now that ASP and Pa Homestead, who's a different art exhibition place. So they do have permanent exhibitions and installations, mostly with contemporary art. And then our host, part of the exhibition, is hosting the artist in residence at ASP end of year exhibition. So they do one exhibition a year from November to February, to the following February, with pieces from all the artists in residence who came to ASP. And that was so that's what is there one more after that? Yes, so that's the two pieces that are, I mean, it sort of combines it combines I think what I really liked is that I had, because I couldn't make full time, really just absolutely commit to the time and the place and just do only this. I did a lot of the Kurinuki work, and I chose these two because it combined the Kurinuki pieces. The small one has got a little lid and it's like a little box inside, and I call them the two Rockies. And they were shown, and just now, I think like 2 days ago, the curator from Pa Homestead, they contacted me and they're actually buying the little one for their permanent collection. So that's quite nice. That's a cherry on the cake. And that's Rangitoto. I don't know if any of you have been to New Zealand. That is the dormant volcano that is sitting really not far from Auckland, across on the Bay of Auckland. And it's got a very distinctive shape, and you can go there and explore.
I've got a question for you,
Yes,
Sylvie.
yes.
It's a very basic, I don't know anything about ceramics question. What is clay?
Well, clay is it's what you dig from the soil. It's soil, basically. It's
How do
soil,
you,
and
but that's that amazing yellowy orange stuff from your father-in-law's farm. How do you
yes,
know that something makes the
actually
clay?
one of the guys who's a teacher there and who's done a lot of work on white clay said, have you got your clay? If even when you have it as a sort of ball of in your hands, if you can somehow make a knot, do a little sausage and try and make a knot with it, if it works and it doesn't break immediately, chances are it's plastic enough to work even on the wheel or to make things with. And then the bigger question is, how hot can you fire it? Because if it can only go to 800 degrees, then you have something that is very porous and really, really not functional. It might be very pretty, but it won't be functional. But if you can get it to 1200, then you could make plates. You could make all sorts.
So the firing is what makes a soil into a usable.
Well, it's also what you find. I mean, you have soils that are very that will have a lot of granite and basically bits of rocks that are, if you wanted to fire them as they are, you would have to fire to I don't know, more than 2000 degrees or 1700 degrees, which is very, very, very difficult to do. And there's the plasticity. If you want to be able to form, I mean, no matter what technique you use, but if you want to be able to make a form out of it, or to sculpt it, or it needs to be a minimum plastic, as in you need to be, because there's some clays that are, it's okay, but it's only okay if you roll something flat, and as soon as you want to turn it to make something round, it cracks everywhere. So you can't really go anywhere with that.
And you spoke about that glaze, which when it was thick, it went white, and when it was thin, it was that white. And what is a glaze?
The glaze is basically powdered oxides and powdered materials, which can be quartz, flint, china clay. I mean, they're all sorts of things that are usually dug or mined. It's ball milled. Each material is ball milled usually, and you have recipes, but actually a chino is there's only 3 ingredients, and it's very simple recipe, and you add water to it, because otherwise you've got only dry ingredients and it will be very messy to put on your pot and very unpractical. So usually you just add water. And you put it to a sort of a single cream consistency. That's more or less the same for any glaze. And you apply it to your pot. And the pot, having been fired normally to 1000 degrees, is still very porous. So it will absorb some of it, enough that it coats your pot. And when I say when it's fixed, so if you actually pour it twice in the same spot, and actually I don't know if I can show you this one. It's a chino. I don't know if you can. On this one, it's a very dark clay. I don't know if, is that better? And you've got it's a chino, but on very dark clay. And there's only one bit where there was a dribble, which is there, where it's slightly whiter. And that's because there was a dribble on top of what I'd done before. So you can, once you've tested it with different thickness of applications, then you can play with it.
And that black clay, does that fire when it comes out of a kiln? Is it black?
Yes. So this particular black clay, it fires jet black, really black. And most of the supposedly black clay that you find here, they usually go under the name of Vulcan for some reason. They are a dark brown to work with, so they're as messy as but they do fire a very dark brown. It's definitely not, I suppose they're very dark, so that's why they call them black, but they're not black as the one I use, and the one you see in the picture, which is really black.
Does anybody else have any questions for Sylvie? You might have to unmute yourself.
Did you find when you got back the clays felt different over here?
Oh yes, actually not so much the clays were okay, because the clays I know, but the glazers, and the fact that I could only, anyway for the time being, fire in oxidation in my boring electric kiln, that felt very much like, I'm going to have to try and I've got to have to try and find a way to fire in gas or to, you know.
Yeah.
So actually there's a bit of that happening this Saturday, actually, as we found somebody at London Potters who's in Wembley and has got this massive gas kiln, which he hasn't fired me. So hopefully, I mixed the Chino with the recipe of ASP. We're firing at the same temperature. So it'll be really interesting if anything interesting comes out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
I find it
interesting.
Yeah, just one other question. The difference between the gas firing and the wood firing, is that just temperature, or is that the effects? Is it just temperature that makes the difference?
Actually,
or is it
both of them are reduction. So both of them, you will reduce, the oxygen will be reduced in both of them, probably about the same, at the same amount. At 800-900, you will start reducing. But in a way, the gas firing, the gas kiln is much cleaner. There's a lot less work. You don't need to stoke it. You won't have shells that have got deposit that you've got to angle grind. I mean, firing with wood as unique. You get the ash that actually melts, because wood ash on its own is basically a natural glaze. So so that's the beauty of it, is that you get, and depending which wood you use, you will have slightly different effects, and so it's always special, I think, wood firings. But both of them are reduction. But a gas firing it's a lot easier to have consistent results. If you've tested something and you apply it the same way on the same clay, chances are, and you do it in the same gas kiln, you will be able to repeat, the effect, which nobody can say that from a wood firing kiln. It's
With the salt, do you use granular salt?
Yeah. We prepared very much the old-fashioned way. Some people these days have essentially something that looks like a paint spray with a long nozzle, long tube, and they have a solution, so they have water and salt in it, and they spray it in holes. Whereas there we had a special long iron, not iron, iron. What was it? They made it actually especially, and you do little parcels in newspaper, little parcel of salt, of actual salt, like you would have, and you have to do, maybe there's about 200 grams per little parcel, and you've got to put in 9 kilos of salt. So you take turns, because it's also the vapors and all that of salt. It's not great for your lungs or your nose, but we wear a mask when it's that time. But you put it in, and you have to make sure you don't knock any pots, and then you go like this, and it sort of pours in the little, and obviously it evaporates immediately because it's already 900 or 1,000 degrees. So, yeah. So yeah, it's
great seeing what
work.
random effect you get at the end.
Yeah, because that's also because it's very much bricks, and once you finish the firing, you brick everything. So you absolutely cannot see anything for a good 24 hours. And then you remove one of the bricks and you try to have a look and put your, iPhone torchlight in to see if there's, so you have an idea if actually the pots at the top, if they start to have like pock marks and all that, it's worked basically.
Fantastic. Any other questions?
Going back to your finding the clay in New Zealand, did you have to do anything to it, or could you work it as it was?
No, that's the amazing thing. I mean, what I thought was going to be really difficult and time consuming and a lot of work turned out to be really easy, because the big work of digging quite deep was done. And the clay, I mean, it was obvious even when I took it in my hands that it was very plastic already. and very pure. There was very little. For example, I tried to do this near the. I'm near the Thames, yeah, and I tried to do this, and basically all I got was tons of gravel. I had things, very little clay and tons of gravel. Whereas there was, not even many plant things, not very many things you had to remove to be able to work with it. So it was the easiest bit, bizarrely. Yeah.
I mean, is there some method of purifying it, or
sorry?
Is there some method of purifying it, or you just don't need to?
You just need to, I mean, it's really by hand or with a big sieve. You start removing the really big bits. And then if there's loads of small particles that you really don't want to keep in it, and might be a problem firing or not firing at the same temperature, then you just have to sieve the whole thing. You have then a sort of powdery thing. You have to rehydrate it, and again let it slake and wedge it again. So all this is really time consuming. And you don't get so many kilos of clay at the end of it. Whereas there, I mean, I think 95% of it was usable as it was found. Yeah, very lucky, I think.
That was amazing. Any other questions? No.
No.
Well, I think, Sylvie, that was absolutely fascinating. I'm a ceramic virgin, as it were, and I didn't know very much, and it looks really, really interesting. And what I find so fascinating is the difference between the clays and the firing, what you see and what you end up with. Often two completely different things.
It was great. It was absolutely brilliant, Sylvie. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Fascinating.
Thank you.
Really fascinating.
Thank you.
I was a bit worried, but if most of the people who came to listen to it were not familiar with ceramics, then it was maybe a bit boring or too technical.
No, it was lovely. It was really good. Really interesting.